From the very first moment the alarms began to scream across the flight line, everything changed. The dawn sky was still half asleep, washed with pale colors of early morning, yet the air around the base throbbed with something fierce and electric. Every pilot on the roster raced toward their aircraft, each one knowing that minutes could redraw the fate of nations. It was on this very morning, when the horizon burned red with tension, that a forgotten call sign appeared on the NORAD detection screens, a call sign that wasn't supposed to be there. A call sign that belonged to someone who had been told she wasn't ready, someone who wasn't scheduled, someone who had been quietly pushed aside. Her name was Ayla Grant, and the moment her identifier shimmered on the radar, the entire command room froze. Ayla had always lived with the sky above her like a promise. She grew up near an old military airfield, where the thunder of engines became the soundtrack of her childhood. She would gaze upward for hours, imagining herself slicing through clouds, her heart racing at the thought of speed and responsibility. But dreams, she learned early on, were never handed freely. Her path wound through skepticism, underestimation, and a world that often asked her to be less than she was. She trained harder than most, stayed longer, studied deeper, pushed through exhaustion with a determination that felt carved from fire. Yet despite all she accomplished, she often found herself overshadowed by louder voices, overlooked for missions she was qualified for, and dismissed by a commander who believed she didn't have the hardened instincts for war. Commander Steele, the man whose approval Ayla had chased for months, delivered the final blow only a week before the morning that would change everything. He told her she wasn't ready to fly combat, not mentally, not emotionally, not the way real pilots are. His words fractured something inside her, but it was a quiet break, one that didn't cry out, didn't beg for validation. Instead, it sank deep into a place where resolve eventually grows. Ayla walked away from that conversation carrying the weight of disappointment, but she did not carry defeat. She spent the following days in the simulator long after others had left, memorizing terrain, responses, and maneuvers until they lived in her body like instinct. She kept her silence, but inside she made a private oath, she would fly. She didn't need permission, she only needed purpose. That purpose came unexpectedly when intelligence reported that a captured American humanitarian convoy had been transported across hostile territory. Among them were pilots, medics, and innocent civilians who had volunteered to deliver food and medical supplies to border villages. The rescue operations demanded immediate air cover, but the squadron was shorthanded. Several aircraft were grounded, and an equipment glitch delayed the launch of the team assigned to escort the search and recover unit. Time was bleeding away faster than anyone could respond, and while the base spiraled in frantic preparation, Ayla quietly suited up, fully aware that she was stepping into a fight she had not been authorized for, and one she might not return from. The morning she stepped onto the flight line, the wind carried the scent of fuel and cold metal. Fighter jets towered around her in harsh silhouettes, their canopies reflecting the rising sun like shards of amber. Her pulse echoed through her gloves as she climbed into the cockpit of Falcon 12, a jet that wasn't scheduled to fly but was fully mission-ready. The moment her fingers wrapped around the controls, she felt something awaken, a balance of fear and belonging that surged through her chest. She wasn't reckless, she wasn't defying orders for pride, she was answering a call she felt deep in her bones, a call that rose from the knowledge that someone had to take the risk, someone had to fly through the storm even when the world doubted them. When the engines roared to life beneath her, the ground trembled, and for the first time in weeks, Ayla felt like herself again. She radioed the tower with steady breath and a voice that carried a strength nobody had recognized in her before. And before the controllers could fully process her intent, she launched into the sky with a force that cut through doubt itself. The clouds swallowed her almost instantly, turning the world white and silent, except for the rhythmic hum of her jet slicing through the air. She navigated turbulence the way a seasoned pilot would, not with panic, but with calm adjustments and a deep trust in her training. Back at the command center, confusion erupted the second her call sign flashed across the radar maps. Officers leaned in, murmuring in disbelief. Steele rushed forward, his face tightening as he realized who it was. For a moment, fury clouded his judgment, but slowly it gave way to something else, fear, concern, and understanding of the risk she was taking. Yet no one could deny what the radar showed. She was climbing faster than expected, cutting the flight path with precision, and moving directly toward coordinates that housed some of the most hostile weapon systems on the border. The skies over enemy territory were cruel. Winds snarled like living creatures, and the clouds were stained with smoke trails from earlier conflict. Ayla flew low, staying beneath the tracking range of enemy radar whenever possible, her eyes scanning every shifting shadow. She could feel uncertainty trying to claw its way into her thoughts, but she refused to let it anchor. The missing convoy depended on her. Their lives hung in the fragile space between minutes, and she was the only one close enough to reach them in time. When she finally located the convoy's signal, it was stationed near the edge of a hostile valley, surrounded by rocky terrain and narrow passages that made landing impossible. Ground forces were closing in from both sides. Ayla's heart pounded as she analyzed the situation, understanding instantly what she had to do. She rose sharply, drawing attention to herself, inviting enemy radar to lock onto her location. She became a decoy, the lone aircraft that dared challenge an entire air defense net. And it worked. Within moments, the enemy redirected their fire, focusing their missiles on her instead of the vulnerable convoy. Every movement she made had to be perfect. Every second mattered. Missiles streaked through the sky, trailing bright arcs as they hunted her jet. She wove through the maze of smoke and danger, pushing her aircraft to its limits. The jet vibrated under the strain, alarms flashing with warnings that she silenced without hesitation. She climbed into steep turns, skimmed cliffs with terrifying precision, and spun through maneuvers that pilots trained for but rarely dared to attempt in real life. Sweat blurred her sight, her arms trembled from the force. But she held on, guiding the missiles away from the convoy until rescue teams finally had time to retrieve the captives. Back at the base, NORAD screens flickered with each near miss, each impossible maneuver she executed. Commanders watched in stunned silence as Ayla performed with a level of instinct and courage that no one had expected. Steele felt a heaviness settle inside him, a realization that he had underestimated someone extraordinary. He watched her fight alone against the odds, his jaw tightening with a mixture of dread and respect he had never allowed himself to feel before. Just when it seemed she had escaped the last missile, the final lock warning blared. One more enemy projectile curved toward her with ruthless accuracy. Ayla dove sharply into a canyon, trying to break the missile's tracking. The walls rushed around her in a blur, the jet screaming under the maneuver. She pushed the aircraft lower and lower, praying the surrounding cliffs would distort the missile's guidance. At the very last second, she pulled up with every ounce of strength in her body. The missile smashed into the canyon wall behind her, erupting in a fireball that shook the entire valley. The shockwave hit her jet, rattling it violently, but she kept control, breath shaking as she emerged back into open air. By the time the rescue units confirmed the convoy was safe, Ayla was running on fumes, emotionally, physically, and literally in terms of fuel. Her jet limped through the sky, systems damaged, alarms flashing like dying heartbeat monitors. She radioed the base with a voice that was soft but determined. They cleared the runway immediately, firefighters and medics lining the edges as they waited for her desperate landing attempt. Her final approach wobbled, the injured jet struggling to respond, but she guided it down with the last remnants of her strength. The moment her aircraft touched the ground, the wheels screeched violently, sparks dancing under the belly of the jet. It slid across the tarmac before finally grinding to a stop. Ayla sat there in silence for a moment, her hands still gripping the controls, her breath unstable. She had done it. She had saved lives, survived the impossible, and proved not only her readiness, but her purpose. The canopy opened, cool air flooding the cockpit as medics rushed toward her. Commander Steele arrived moments later, speechless as he saw the young pilot who had rewritten everything he believed. He didn't need to say anything. The look in his eyes held the apology, the respect, and the pride she had fought so long to earn. Her call sign, the one he claimed wasn't ready, became the one that changed the entire mission. And that morning became the day the world learned that courage doesn't wait for permission. If this story touched your heart, if Ayla's courage and determination moved you, please consider supporting this video. Your engagement truly helps bring powerful stories to life. Before we end, tell me in the comments, what part of Ayla's journey inspired you the most?